Hey guys, and welcome to another brand new video. In this video, we actually have some very interesting news going on over here where it comes to now a pretty big leak / rumor floating around when it comes to some industry insiders discussing and talking about the fact of how hardcore Sony and PlayStation is when it comes to their games themselves, where they pretty much almost are demanding perfection when it comes to the games overall, and of course, kind of the drama and basically the big pressure on developers and everything else that might come with it. So we're gonna go talk about this, talk about some drama, talk about some other actual big updates too as well from Starfield, some other kind of cool news as well. Just let's go and talk about a bunch of random little stuff. So make sure you guys are subscribed, notifications on. We're gonna be playing some Diablo up on Twitch if you guys are bored. A link down below and live right now, and of course on Twitter and all that good stuff. And give me your thoughts and comments on all of this down below. So we actually had a very intriguing over here Reddit post when it came to someone called Zukov, who actually had a chance to go and highlight and quotate and bring up a lot of really big kind of drama when it came from some Sony insiders. Now we're gonna be basically using and praising this type of stuff from like basically executives who have worked with Sony. It's actually coming from like a first-hand source, where this actually did getting removed as well when it came from Reddit, when I had a chance to go and see it. But I did have a chance to read through it and kind of saw a lot of the spark and discussion, and I thought it was kind of a crazy discussion to talk about either way, where they had a chance to go and stating that Sony demands at least a 90 Metacritic score from its major studios like, say, Naughty Dog or Santa Monica, says the former God of War art director. Now, this post went a little bit more just in-depth on like the discussing the overall facts that Sony really cares a lot about the reviews, the overall general community sentiment, how widespread the actual games usually are and typically can be. So it seems like, let's say, like a game like a Horizon, will that game go into mass appeal? Will these games go and sell well in like a China, Japan, UK, Canada, wherever it may be? And on top of that too, of how just the general community kind of sees the game, both for quality, storyline telling, and everything else. And this would make a lot of sense. So very first and foremost, like, it's kind of more scary in the word demands, first and foremost. But when it comes to a game, if you're Xbox, your PlayStation, you're looking at these reviews, especially for these really big, heavy hitters. So you as the CEO or the executives have to respond if there's anything more bad. Like, so let's say you're going to go and make, say, God of War or Ragnarok, and that game turned out horribly. And guess what? People are going to be asking, hey, how do you spend hundreds of millions of dollars on this certain game? Why did it not perform well? Why were you not checking? Why were the executives not on top of this? What about the quality assurance? And I think a really good example is probably on Redfall. If you guys do remember, Redfall was kind of like somewhat hidden underneath the cracks. And a lot of folks are like, yeah, this game is literally dog. Like, this is a horrible game, horrible experience, not a good experience. I do not like this game in any capacity. So we go and see this. Like, we saw people talking about this and mention this type of stuff. And I agree. It's, well, not good. Like, you want to make sure you know what games are going on. But the fact that Sony is now more in the heavily demanding is kind of hard to say, because not every game is going to be a 90% on every critic. So there's certain people who don't necessarily maybe like, say, a game that's maybe like a very formulaic Sony type style game. Maybe they don't necessarily like RPGs. Maybe they don't like FPSs. Maybe they don't like necessarily like the main characters, or maybe there's like one part that just everyone disliked. Maybe the start of the game was really bad. There's always like all these very various things, which is why I typically like to make my own reviews, or at least have my own, like, maybe like look at other people's reviews for a rough idea and then formulate my own afterwards. And that's why kind of why it goes crazy that it says apparently that people want to push this 90% rating. Because look at things like Metacritic, sometimes they're acceptable. So I want to go for a good example over here. On the Metascore, it's at a 94 for God of War Ragnarok. I thought this game was phenomenal, very good game. I enjoyed it. I would play it again. And you want to know what? I think a lot of you guys watching, if you guys have not had a chance to play it, you guys probably should. The critics had an overall 140 positive view, 1 mixed, and then user reviews were mostly pretty good. Some were saying it was negative, some were mixed on it, but mostly it was pretty good. But if you also look at, say, the user score, that alone was only an 8.0. But I'd say an 8.0 is pretty good for most games nowadays, because I usually only give like an 8.5 for a game I'm in love with. Maybe a 9 if it's really good. I almost never go give 10s. But if you also go and factor into some other various games too, like most of them are usually around that same boat. Say for the critic reviews, an 88, that's pretty good. I'd probably round it up to a 90, and I'm sure most folks are happy, especially because Horizon's a little bit more of a new IP, a sequel, has PS4 issues. Like, there's a lot of other various things you can kind of tie into that would make sense. But it also kind of goes into some memes where why people were stating that, hey, maybe this is why Days Gone and other various big PlayStation studio games never maybe had a chance to go get another game. For examples, if you look at, say, like Metacritic for Days Gone, it was a 71. So 63 positive, 42 mixed, and 4 negative reviews. And a lot of folks were a little bit more on the hardcore side when it came to it. And then would maybe go and explain why I'm Sony. Because if you're a game studio, and like, say, your PlayStation studios, you want perfection. You want this wide sale, like everyone can play these games and enjoy these games type of vibe, because that's what people want. That's what people need. That's what people want to be a part of. And then you go and you see all this type of stuff, and you see a game like a Days Gone, you don't want to fund it because you think that the critics might go and bash on the second one. Or as well, maybe you go and spend $100 million making, developing, and marketing a game, and you don't even get the returns at the end of the day. So it's crazy to go and see that even some Sony executives had and felt that brush, that pressure, where they almost need to go push out perfection. Because I'm sure if you guys have played video games for a long time, or, well, know people who review things, it's very hard, if not, in my honest opinion, impossible to make a proper, purely 100% perfect game. There's always going to be something and someone out there who will not appreciate it or like it as you kind of go through the process, which I don't want to say is fine per se, but it's just one of those things where it happens. Like, there's gonna not every game can appeal to every single person, and that's kind of why it's crazy, because the actual overall demand on a 90% or more better review score is rough. Now, I'm sure, and the main focus on this one is maybe even like not like a little bit of a stretch, because I'm sure sales probably matter the most. Because if you have a game that's an 8 out of 10 and people are like, it's mediocre, but the wide sale game makes it extremely profitable and people generally like it, or the user scores like it better, I, as a company, would probably look at that more. I'd probably care more about the overall profit and revenue I'm making rather than anything else. And that's just kind of my honest opinion when it comes to it. Now, does every game studio have that same exact boat? Couldn't tell you, because some game studios are stupid and some big higher ups are a little bit too maybe focus on things that don't matter as much rather than just making a good game. But it's crazy to go and see that people are, well, on top of this. And now a lot of folks are kind of making comments on this one too as well, where a lot of folks are saying like, hey, Grassetti confirmed that these reviews are very important to the studios, that he is against random reviewers being allowed on Metacritic, because apparently Metacritic is like the big video game thing, like the IMDb of video games, where this is like the first thing all these big head honchos or like the Jim Ryans will look at when their new games come out. They also had to go and deny the existence of an extra payment based on score performances. In fact, bonuses were more so towards geared sales figures. So once again, like, that kind of goes and highlights that while Sony probably is very adamant and very wants to push these high-level things, such as, hey, like, we want you to go get us really good reviews. We want to make sure this works. But at the same time, sales, once again, is probably what drives the company. Sales is what drives business. Sales is what drives like innovation and growth and everything else. And I'm sure that's what probably matters the most when it comes to these people. But it's kind of crazy because a lot of folks are just kind of somewhat almost calling out Sony on their behalf of how they interact with this. Like, they don't want these devs having to go worry too much. They just want devs to go make a proper good games. But as well, like, it kind of just depends, kind of like, I don't know, so weirdity. Because some games, such as like, say, Redfall, that game was horrible. But that's also kind of like maybe a good example of what Sony's trying their best to go and prevent against it. So I don't know. It's one of those really kind of big things where you see this and it's just scary. Like, I don't think I would want to have that same expectation of a 90% or better, especially when it comes to how harsh the video game world is. Now, I can respect Sony wanting to go push for this. I like a company that wants good scores. But sometimes it doesn't happen. Like, sometimes if you try to go and get that perfect game, sometimes they become too monotonous. Sometimes you don't allow to have creativity. And I sometimes think creativity can breed into even more brand new games over time. And that's what I like. I like to see that. So seeing anything else kind of throws me off a little bit, and I would love to hear your thoughts and comments on the overall topic. So all around, very intriguing to see on how stressed it kind of seems like that PlayStation is. Now, we have some pretty cool news, though, when it came to Bethesda's good old Starfield, where Tom Howard has now confirmed that Starfield's performance and frame rate on the Xbox Series X and S is a lot. So apparently Starfield runs at 30 frames per second. There's a little bit of an oof over here when it comes to the Xbox Series X and S. And I maybe want to go make this a little bit more of a dedicated video as time goes on, just so you guys do know. So you guys may, if this kind of brings a little more news. This will probably be popping off a lot as of tomorrow. So you get an IGN in the new interview ahead of this Xbox showcase. Howard said that Starfield runs in 4K resolution, the Xbox Series X, and 1440p. So it does run in higher resolution, so 4K 30. I'm not too against that, but has also locked Starfield at 30 FPS on consoles to ensure more of a consistency. Now, I'm not really the biggest fan of this, although with how big and how much stuff is probably loading when it comes to these games, it does make sense, but at the same time, I do kind of wish there'd be a little bit more, I don't know, more graphics, more frames. I mean, I'm going to be playing on PC either way. So I think it'll come as no surprise, given our previous games, what we go for. Always these huge open worlds, fully dynamic, hyper detail, where anything can happen, and we do what we want to do. It's 4K in the X, it's 1440 in the S. We lock it at 30 because we want that fidelity. We want all that stuff. We don't want to sacrifice any of it. So fortunately, in this one, we've got it running great. It's often running way above that. Sometimes it's 60, but on consoles, we do lock it because we prefer the consistency, even when you're not thinking about it. So it just kind of seems like Starfield is locked at 30 FPS. I'm like not necessarily too against this, but I may want to go discuss this a little bit more, especially with the big controversy with the Xbox Series S as well. And last but not least, a little bit of cool little pictures over here from Obsidian. We're just going to see some cool stuff over here for Avowed, which a lot of folks are hyped up for. So give me your thoughts and comments on all this type of stuff as well. Make sure you guys are subscribed with the notifications on. We have the Twitch stream down below. We're hanging out and chilling. We have the Twitter down below too as well. And also the Amazon links too in case you guys care about that. And I'll see you guys all tomorrow for some more brand new videos.